I never thought betrayal would knock so quietly. You expect shouting, denial, maybe even some melodramatic confession. But no, it all started with a casual scroll on my wife's laptop. Saturday mornings were my quiet time. I had just brewed a pot of dark roast, the kind Melissa complained made the house smell like a mechanic's garage, and was printing shipping forms for a warehouse update. Her laptop was faster than mine, and she'd left it open on the dining room table as she usually did. Harmless, right? That's when I saw the email. Subject line, Broadmoor Resort confirmation, your romantic weekend awaits. I clicked on it. I don't know why. Maybe it was instinct or maybe something in me already knew. 2 guests. Check-in next Friday. Deluxe suite, mountain view, spa credits, a bottle of champagne scheduled to be in the room on arrival. Beneath all that luxury and detail sat 2 names, Melissa Baker and Andrew Calder. I didn't know an Andrew Calder. I stared at the screen, each word crawling under my skin like ants. My coffee went cold in my hand. At first, I wasn't even angry. I just felt hollow, not surprised. And somehow that was worse. I walked into the kitchen where Melissa was blending her matcha protein shake, the one she insisted cost more because quality matters when you take care of yourself. She hadn't noticed me yet. The blender roared, drowning the quiet churn inside my chest. When she finally shut it off, I said calmly, "Who's Andrew?" She turned, looking like I'd just asked what color the sky was. "What?" "Andrew Calder. Broadmoor Hotel. Deluxe suite? Next weekend." Her face didn't twitch. Not a flinch. "You went through my laptop? You left it open." "That's not the point, Evan. That's a massive invasion of privacy. Answer the question." "I can't believe this." Her voice rose as she slammed the blender jar onto the counter. "I'm planning a team retreat. It's a business thing. For 2. She glared at me. "Yes. 2 people. I'm one of the project leads." "God, are you really this insecure?" My throat tightened. "Then why's there champagne on the reservation?" "Oh my God, Evan," she snapped, "you're such a child sometimes. Do you seriously think everything's some secret plot? Maybe if you didn't spend all your time playing delivery boy." That's when it hit me. She wasn't defensive. She was furious. Not because I had caught her in a lie, but because she couldn't control the narrative this time. I could feel it bubbling up, the years of little cuts. Her constant complaints about our modest home, the one I paid for. Her jabs at my small-time trucking job, never once asking what I actually did. She used to say things like, "Well, Linda's husband just got promoted again. They're going to Fiji. Must be nice." Or, "Why don't you network more? You drive trucks, Evan. Talk to people." It never crossed her mind that I was the one giving orders, not taking them. I was a logistics CEO hiding in plain sight. Not for fun. Not out of ego. Just to know who really valued me when there was nothing flashy to cling to. And Melissa? She failed that test years ago. I just didn't want to believe it. "You lied," I said. "And you know it." "I didn't lie," she hissed. "You're just an insecure man-child who snoops because you can't handle being married to someone with real ambition. You think ambition is booking a champagne weekend behind your husband's back? Oh, give me a break, Evan. You think you're so noble because you haul boxes for a living." And that's when she did it. With one sharp motion, she reached for the mop bucket beside the fridge. We had cleaned the kitchen floor the night before. The water was filthy. Gray. Floating bits of old food and cleaning grime. She didn't hesitate. The pot arced through the air and I didn't move. I stood there, arms at my sides, as the lukewarm swamp hit me square in the chest. My shirt clung to my skin, the smell of mildew and vinegar rising up instantly. She was breathing hard, eyes wild. "Get out," she said. "Get out of my house." I didn't flinch. Didn't speak. Just slowly peeled my shirt from my skin, water dripping onto the tile. I looked her dead in the eyes, not with anger. Not even with heartbreak. Just clarity. "You know," I said, my voice quiet, "you never once asked me what I do when I travel for work." She scoffed, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Because I know what you do. You're in freight. You manage trucks." I nodded. "That's part of it. Don't play mysterious now. It's pathetic." "Melissa," I said, pausing just long enough to see her brows twitch in annoyance, "do you know who owns Blue Hawk Freight Holdings?" She laughed. "No, but let me guess, someone you drive for?" I stepped past her. "Me? What? I own it. Every terminal. Every truck. Every one of the 9,000 employees that report up the chain. You're standing in a house that doesn't belong to you. That you mocked. That you resented." She opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. "Don't," I said, finally letting a trace of steel into my voice. "Don't pretend you didn't know what you were doing. You chose a champagne suite and a man with a 6-figure name, thinking you'd finally upgrade. You just forgot to check who you were standing next to. And I walked out. Dripping, smelling like mop water and betrayal, I walked past the Range Rover I bought under her name and climbed into my truck, the one she joked looked like it came from a used auction. I sat there for a moment before turning the ignition. Not because I didn't know what to do next. Because I did. And she was about to find out exactly who she had thrown away. Driving away from my own home, or what used to be my home, the only thing I felt was a kind of cold that didn't come from wet clothes. It came from something deeper, something sharper. It wasn't just what Melissa did. It was how little she thought of me while doing it. The truth was I'd been ignoring red flags for years. And that realization hit harder than the mop water she hurled at me. For most of our marriage, I kept things simple. Unbranded clothes, modest vehicles, no flashy jewelry or designer anything. I wanted to be seen for who I was, not what I owned. Melissa used to say she admired that about me back when we were dating. You're so grounded, she'd tell me. So real. But the admiration didn't last. As time passed, her comments shifted from admiration to subtle jabs. We could really use a better car, she'd say while eyeing our Audi A4 like it was a beater. Or, Linda's husband just bought her a Cartier bracelet. It's their anniversary next week. Isn't that sweet? I'd smile. Nod. Pretend it didn't sting. She thought I was just some middle manager in a transportation firm. And I never corrected her. Because part of me wanted to believe she loved me for me, not the billion-dollar operation I quietly ran from behind the curtain. I wasn't hiding who I was. I was observing who she chose to be. And the person she chose to be that had become painfully obvious over the years. Every girls' trip that conveniently lined up with long weekends. Every work conference that didn't show up on her company's calendar. The designer handbags that she got on sale. The new shoes that matched nothing else she owned. I chalked it up to bad judgment. Impulsive spending. Mild resentment. I didn't want to believe my wife could be that cruel. That calculated. But she was. Now looking back, it was also clear. Melissa never stopped comparing me to her friends' husbands. Never stopped chasing some image of luxury, one that was always just out of reach because she didn't realize she was already living in it. And that weekend getaway? That was just the spark that lit the pile of dry lies she'd been stacking for years. By the time I reached the edge of the city, my shirt had dried into a stiff reminder across my chest. I pulled off into a gas station, went into the bathroom, and changed into a fresh polo and jeans from my emergency duffel, the one I kept in my truck in case flights got canceled or plans changed on the road. I looked at myself in the mirror. Same face. Same eyes. But something behind them had shifted. I wasn't just hurt. I was done. That night, I checked into a quiet extended stay hotel 20 minutes out of town. Nothing flashy. Just comfort. A place to think. A place to plan. First thing I did was pull up the vehicle GPS logs. Melissa didn't know I had Blue Hawk installed trackers on every vehicle registered under the company, including the luxury SUV she drove daily. It wasn't for spying. It was for security. But now it served a very different purpose. I entered the time frame Friday afternoon to Sunday morning and waited. The results popped up. Vehicle parked at Broadmoor Resort, Colorado Springs. Arrived 3:17 p.m. Friday. Departed 9:02 a.m. Sunday. No stops in between. So she really did go. With him. I cross-referenced the hotel's guest entrance camera with a service I quietly subscribed to, a security partnership Blue Hawk maintained with several hospitality chains. Sure enough, there she was. Walking arm in arm with a man I didn't recognize. Tall, preppy, the kind of guy who wears sunglasses indoors. He had his hand on her lower back as they walked toward the check-in desk. And Melissa? She looked radiant. Not in a natural, happy way. In a rehearsed, carefully curated way, the kind of look she used to give me when we first dated, and she was still trying to impress. I didn't need to see more. I closed the browser. Sat back. Let the betrayal settle in fully. The next steps came naturally. Not out of revenge. Out of self-respect. I opened my tablet and accessed my private asset portal, Blue Hawk's executive console, where I managed everything from payroll to property. First, I revoked all access to our joint financial accounts. Accounts she rarely contributed to anyway. Second, I locked down her company credit card. Third, I began rerouting the property title of our home, legally registered under a shell firm owned by Blue Hawk, to begin foreclosure proceedings. It wasn't petty. It was business. Melissa thought she was married to a man with a fleet of trucks and a worn-down ambition. What she didn't realize was that everything, the car, the house, the phone in her hand, ran on my patience. And that patience had just expired. By the time the sun rose the next morning, I'd already arranged to have a team catalog every high-value item in our home. Melissa wasn't on the ownership deeds. She didn't even have her name on the Wi-Fi bill. Everything had been structured through holding entities for liability reasons, something she never cared to ask about. She thought I was just paranoid about taxes. No, Melissa. I was building an escape plan. When the phone rang at 8:14 a.m., it was my assistant, Raina. She sounded more alert than usual. "Sir," she said, voice steady. "You sure you want me to initiate the full separation protocol?" "Yes," I said. "Everything, as we planned. And Raina, have a repossession team at the house by noon." She didn't miss a beat. "Understood." I hung up and stared at the ceiling. It wasn't about revenge. It was about restoration. About reclaiming who I was before Melissa turned me into a background character in my own life. I texted one of our legal leads, a quiet, ruthless man named Joseph Lin, and said just 3 words, "Time to proceed." The dots were connected. The chessboard was set. Melissa had made her move. Now it was my turn. I didn't sleep that night. Not out of grief, not even out of anger. Just purpose. I lay there in the dim light of the hotel room, watching the ceiling fan spin above me, running every detail over and over in my mind like a logistics checklist. Identify the problem. Trace the origin. Execute the contingency. Melissa was the problem. The origin? A lifetime of pretending not to see the cracks. And now it was time for execution. By mid-morning, I was back in my truck, heading toward one of Blue Hawk's regional hubs. Not to work, but to retrieve the last pieces of evidence I needed before disappearing entirely from her life. Inside the facility, my lead security officer, Trey, greeted me with a nod. He didn't ask questions, just handed me the envelope. "All there," he said, pulled the timestamps and cross-referenced with vehicle logs. Inside the envelope were stills and security clips from the Broadmoor's parking structure and private corridor surveillance. Not just her walking in, but images of her kissing Andrew in the lobby, lounging with him in the spa waiting room, and sharing champagne on the balcony of their suite. There was no denying it. No space for excuses or misinterpretations. I wasn't even sure if I felt anything anymore. My heart didn't race. My jaw didn't clench. I just nodded, thanked Trey, and left. I drove straight to a private storage facility on the outskirts of town. Blue Hawk owned the land, and the unit had been mine for over a decade. A place I kept emergency supplies, cash reserves, copies of critical documents, and clothes. Some might have called it paranoia. I called it preparation. I spent the next 2 hours transferring key items into my truck. A duffel with basic clothing, my fireproof safe, 2 phones. One personal, one encrypted, and a laptop containing business intel separate from the house Wi-Fi. Melissa had no idea it existed. At noon, I pulled into the driveway of our home one last time. The Range Rover was parked out front. I knew she was home. She probably thought I'd gone to sulk, to retreat like I usually did after arguments. She'd gotten used to that pattern. She screamed, I absorbed, and we swept it under the rug. But not today. 3 black SUVs were lined up behind me, unmarked, each one carrying 2 inventory specialists and a legal observer. I greeted them briefly, handed the lead manager a clipboard. "You have 6 hours," I said. "Catalog everything. Bag only what's owned by the firm. Leave personal items by the entry." He nodded, wordless. I entered the house without knocking. Melissa was standing in the kitchen, coffee in hand, in a silk robe she never wore around me. She looked startled, then annoyed. "Oh," she said. "So now you come back?" I didn't answer. I just walked past her, straight into the office, opened the safe behind the painting, and retrieved my last stack of sealed legal packets. When I returned to the foyer, she was still there, arms crossed. "You look like hell," she said. "Did you even sleep? Or were you too busy playing detective?" I dropped the packet on the table. "This is a termination of shared property access. The home, the car, the accounts, all reverted. You have 24 hours to gather personal items. After that, you're trespassing." Her eyes widened. "Excuse me. You heard me." She laughed bitter and shrill. You can't just kick me out of our house, Evan. It's not our house. You've never been on the title. It's a corporate asset under Blue Hawk Freight Holdings. And you're not an employee. You're insane. No, I said, voice steady. You're just uninformed. At that moment, the front door opened again and the inventory team stepped inside. Uniformed, gloved, efficient. They spread out through the living room, photographing furniture, checking labels, tagging electronics. Melissa turned, stunned. Who the hell are these people? They're reclaiming what belongs to the company, I said. You can't do this. I already did. She stepped in front of one of the men as he reached for a vase. Don't touch that. That's mine. The lead observer, a calm woman in a navy blazer, stepped forward. Ma'am, this item is listed under Asset Group 314B. Legally registered to Beach FH. Please step aside. Melissa turned to me, her voice shrill. This is abuse. You're trying to erase me. No, I said quietly. I'm just reclaiming what's mine. Her mouth opened, but she didn't speak. Maybe it was the suits. Maybe it was the lack of emotion in my face. But something finally clicked. I walked up the stairs, entered her bedroom, or what used to be ours, and opened the closet. I took down 2 framed photos from the shelf. One was from our honeymoon in Big Sur. The other was her graduation. I placed them gently on the bed. She followed me up a few minutes later. Why are you doing this? She asked, voice breaking. I know I messed up, okay? But you don't have to ruin my life. I'm not ruining your life, I said. You did that the moment you chose someone else over honesty. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. I saw the footage. I saw the kiss. I saw you 2 sipping champagne in a suite I paid for. Her face went pale. You were spying on me? No. I was verifying. The silence stretched. I can change, she whispered. I can make this right. You had 1,000 chances, I said. You used them all. I left the bedroom, descended the stairs, and passed the growing collection of boxed items near the front door. By late afternoon, the power company had cut the electricity, the internet provider had disabled access, and the Range Rover, already tagged for repossession, was towed from the driveway. Melissa stood at the doorway as the sun began to dip below the horizon. Her robe now covered in dust, her expression hollow. She looked around at the boxes, the cables, the blank walls. Everything felt quieter. As if the house itself was holding its breath. I never knew you could be this cruel, she said. I paused, hand on the door. This isn't cruelty, Melissa, I said. This is consequence. And with that I stepped outside, pulled the door closed behind me, and didn't look back. The next morning, Melissa woke up in a world she didn't recognize. No gentle hum of the HVAC system, no morning news playing from the smart speaker, no phone buzzing with Instagram notifications. Just stillness. When she pulled back the blackout curtains, the sun revealed what the darkness had hidden, emptiness. The furniture was gone. Only the bare bones remained, hardwood floors, blank walls, a few dust rings where side tables used to be. She stepped into the hallway, blinking hard. At first, maybe she thought it was a dream, some punishment her subconscious had conjured. But the absence was real. And it was just beginning. Downstairs, 2 uniformed men were folding the last of the company-registered rugs, while a woman with a tablet oversaw inventory tags. Another man rolled up the cables from the entertainment system Melissa had once insisted they upgrade, despite Evan's quiet hesitation. She descended the stairs slowly, gripping the railing, her silk robe fluttering around her like she was a ghost haunting her own house. Excuse me, she said, voice brittle. What is going on? The woman in the navy blazer looked up, not unkind, just firm. As noted in yesterday's formal notice, you were granted a 24-hour period to retrieve personal items. That window closes at noon. Melissa looked around as if expecting someone to intervene, to tell her this was a joke. But there was no Evan. No protest. Only order and silence. Where's Evan? She demanded. Mr. Baker no longer resides here, the woman said. The property is under the control of Blue Hawk Freight Holdings. Melissa's jaw dropped. This is my home. The woman tapped her tablet, then swiveled it to show Melissa a digital file. According to county records, she said, this property is owned by a holding company affiliated with Beach FH. Your name is not present on the deed, mortgage, utility contracts, or maintenance agreements. But I've lived here. For years. Yes, ma'am, the woman said without malice. But legal residence does not establish ownership. Melissa turned, suddenly dizzy. She rushed to the kitchen and yanked open the cabinets, empty. No plates, no glasses, not even a spoon left behind. She checked the fridge, unplugged and cleaned. The wine rack? Gone. She stormed into the garage, the Range Rover was missing. Panic took root. She ran to the master bathroom, turned the faucet, nothing. Flip the light switch, nothing. The house wasn't just quiet. It was dead. She pulled out her phone to call Evan, but the screen showed no service. She stared at the Wi-Fi icon, grayed out. She tried again, no luck. The cell plan was part of a corporate account. It was gone too. Somewhere between disbelief and desperation, she managed to throw on jeans and a hoodie and grab her tote bag, one of the few things the team hadn't tagged for removal. Her laptop was gone too. Not stolen, simply gone, like everything else she once assumed was hers. Outside, she found a piece of paper taped to the mailbox, notice of foreclosure, effective immediately. She pulled it down with shaking hands. A car humped nearby, the repo truck from the day before, now driving past, hauling someone else's forgotten comfort. The neighbors peeked through blinds, then quickly disappeared. Melissa stood on the porch, barefoot, mascara smudged, heart pounding. For the first time, she realized no one was coming to save her. She pulled out her phone again and tried to call her sister, Courtney. Straight to voicemail. Again. Voicemail. She finally typed a text, "Please call me. It's urgent. Evan's gone and took everything. I don't know what to do." No response. 2 hours later, she stood outside Courtney's home in Glendale, knocking furiously. When the door finally opened, it wasn't Courtney who answered, it was her husband, Dean. He looked at her, eyes cold. I need to talk to Courtney," she said, trying to smile. "Please. Just for a minute." Dean shook his head. "She doesn't want to see you." "What? Why?" "I'm her sister." "We're her sister," he corrected. "She's done." Melissa's eyes welled. "You don't understand what's happening. Evan, he's destroying my life." Dean stepped outside, closing the door behind him. "Evan's protecting his life," he said quietly. "Something you stopped doing a long time ago." "Please," she whispered. "Just let me talk to her. She knows everything, Melissa. We all do." Melissa blinked. "What are you talking about?" "About the way you treated him. The constant jabs. The belittling. The cheating." She backed away like she'd been slapped. "You knew." "Yeah. We knew. And we said nothing. Because Evan asked us not to." Her voice cracked. "Why?" "Because he wanted to give you a chance to do the right thing. You never did." Dean reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded envelope. "He left this for you." He handed it to her and stepped back inside. The door clicked shut. Melissa stood on the front step, fingers trembling, and opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Typed. Signed. "Melissa. You chose image over honesty. You chose comfort over character. You chose him. Now live with it. Evan." She dropped the letter. The sun was starting to set. No home. No car. No job. Her access to Evan's business network had been her stepping stone. No phone, no cash beyond the $200 she had left in her wallet. Melissa sat down on the cold concrete porch, knees to her chest, the world spinning around her. She had wanted a man who wore polished shoes and paid for caviar without checking the price. She had one. All along. And she threw him away. By Monday morning, Melissa's name no longer held weight, not even in her own family. The night after being turned away by her sister, she checked into a roadside motel off I-17 using the last working debit card she had, a secondary account Evan had overlooked or maybe left active on purpose. Either way, the balance was $437.52. The room was musty, the sheets stiff, and the air conditioner clicked every 12 seconds like a metronome counting down the last moments of a life she no longer recognized. She slept in her clothes, woke up dizzy from dehydration and dread, and spent the morning trying to reach anyone who might still return her calls. Her mother didn't answer. Her father sent a curt text, "Sort yourself out." Even her cousin Natalie, who once begged Melissa to be a bridesmaid, ghosted her. At 1:04 p.m., she sat in her car outside Courtney's house again, hands gripping the wheel, knuckles white. This time, she didn't even make it to the front door. Courtney came out before she could knock. She stood on the porch with crossed arms, no makeup, hair pulled into a messy bun. Behind her, Dean hovered just inside the frame. "I just want to talk," Melissa pleaded, stepping out of the car. Courtney shook her head slowly. "There's nothing left to say. You're my sister." "You were." Melissa's voice cracked. "You're all I have left." "No," Courtney replied, stepping down one step. "You had everything, Melissa. You had Evan, the most patient, loyal man any of us had ever seen. And you treated him like a speed bump." "I didn't know," Melissa whispered. "None of us knew he was that rich?" Courtney cut in. "That powerful? Is that what matters?" Melissa flinched. "No. I just mean. You mean if you'd known, maybe you would have respected him more. Or at least kept your lies in check. That's not fair." What's not fair, Courtney said, eyes blazing, is watching you humiliate him at family dinners. Watching you roll your eyes when he talked about warehouse scheduling. Watching you laugh behind his back with your wineglass clique, calling him your starter husband. You think we didn't notice? Tears streamed down Melissa's face. I didn't mean for it to get this bad. But it did, Courtney said. Because you made it that way. Dean stepped onto the porch behind his wife. You need to leave, Melissa. Just 5 minutes, Melissa begged. Courtney took a deep breath. Evan called us the night he left. Said we might hear from you. Told us not to intervene. Not because he was angry, because he wanted us to finally let go. Melissa's lip trembled. You're siding with him? No, Courtney said. I'm siding with decency. Melissa staggered back a step. So that's it? I don't have a family anymore. You don't have a version of us that puts up with you mistreating the one person who ever gave you everything. Courtney turned and walked back into the house. The door closed, this time without drama, without slamming. Just finality. Melissa stood there for another minute, then climbed back into her car. She drove without a destination, circling familiar blocks, old coffee shops, parks she used to jog through. It was all still there, the world she once knew, but she was no longer part of it. It was like watching a life she used to live through a locked window. She thought about texting Evan. Just once. Just to say something. Anything. She opened her phone, typed. Please. Just one conversation. Just tell me why. She hovered over send. Then deleted it. What could he say that she didn't already know? The truth wasn't hard to find, it was just too bitter to swallow. She had always seen Evan as functional, not fascinating. Reliable, not remarkable. A placeholder. A provider who never quite fit the image she had curated for herself. She used to joke with friends, Evan's sweet, but he's more pit stop than final destination. They laughed. She laughed louder. She thought he didn't hear. He heard enough. Melissa pulled into a grocery store parking lot and sat there, staring at the shopping carts bumping against each other in the wind. At 3:15 p.m. she got a call from a blocked number. Her breath caught. For a moment she dared to hope. Hello, she answered quickly. A pause. Then a voice clipped, professional. This is Olivia Chin with American West Financial Services. We're calling to inform you that your account has been suspended due to identity discrepancy and lack of updated employment verification. Please contact our office. Melissa hung up. Another account. Another lifeline gone. She leaned her head against the steering wheel. The world had moved on. She drove back to the motel and found a note taped to her door. Payment for the next night was due by 6 p.m. She had $142.19 left in the account. She sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through job listings, none of which fit the resume she had. Her experience at Blue Hawk, her only corporate reference, was voided. HR would confirm only that she was no longer affiliated with the firm. No title, no details, no endorsements. She wasn't just fired. She was erased. At 8:43 p.m. she tried calling a college friend she hadn't spoken to in years, a woman named Jess who used to work in public relations. The line rang twice. Then went dead. Blocked. By 10 p.m. she had stopped trying to reach anyone. Instead, she sat with the lights off, staring at the blank motel wall, wondering how her world had collapsed in less than 72 hours. The next morning, the motel receptionist knocked gently on her door. Ma'am, she said, holding a paper slip. Just confirming you'll be checking out today? Melissa nodded slowly. She didn't know where she'd go next. But she knew one thing for certain. Evan was gone. And so was everyone else who mattered. 6 months later, Melissa tried one last desperate attempt to reclaim her former life. She found out Evan was scheduled to receive an award at an industry gala in Los Angeles, Innovator of the Year, from the North American Freight Leaders Council. She wasn't invited. Didn't matter. She used a borrowed dress, an old contact, and a fake RSVP to get through the door. The ballroom was everything she remembered about Evan's hidden world, suits sharp enough to slice silence, women in dresses that whispered status, laughter like champagne bubbles rising too fast. She kept to the shadows, waiting for a break in the spotlight. Just 5 minutes. That's all she needed. Just enough time to explain. To be seen. Then the screens lit up. 2 giant projectors on opposite sides of the room. A video began to play, part of a tribute reel for Blue Hawk's corporate culture. Smiling employees. Clean warehouses. Evan giving a tour in safety goggles. Then it cut. To her. Standing in their kitchen. Screaming. Throwing mop water. The room fell silent. Forks froze midair. A narrator's voice played over the footage, neutral and clinical. Resilience means knowing who you are even when you're underestimated. It means walking away even when no one's watching. The video ended. Polite applause followed. Evan stepped onto the stage, calm, regal in a dark tailored suit. He didn't even glance at her. "I accept this," he said, "on behalf of everyone who's ever been dismissed, doubted, or disrespected. You don't have to explain yourself to people who never saw you." He paused, eyes skimming the crowd. Some chapters close violently, but they close all the same. Melissa tried to approach afterward, but security stopped her before she could get 3 feet from the edge of the ballroom. "Mr. Baker isn't taking guests," one of them said. "But I'm his A." "You're not." She was escorted out through the service entrance. That was the last time she ever saw him in person. 2 years later, Evan Baker stood atop Blue Hawk Tower in Singapore, overlooking a city humming with the speed of commerce. His company operated across 3 continents now. He'd long since passed the billion-dollar valuation. He was no longer a man people overlooked. He was the one they chased. Everywhere he went, Tokyo, Paris, Vancouver, people knew his name. But none of them knew Melissa's. She had become a footnote. A whisper. A viral cautionary tale. After the gala footage made its rounds on social media, Melissa's name trended for all the wrong reasons. Internet sleuths uncovered everything: the reservation, the cheating, the cold behavior at family functions. She was doxxed, mocked, memed. She tried moving to smaller cities, tried applying for jobs under her maiden name. Nothing stuck. By the time she reached Phoenix, she was living week to week in shelters, sometimes holding a cardboard sign offering to clean houses for food. She wore sunglasses not to shield herself from the sun, but from recognition. She had learned what true silence felt like, not just the absence of noise, but the absence of dignity. Evan never gloated, never spoke ill of her, never needed to. He had already won the only way that mattered. By living free. Free from pity. Free from pretense. Free from the woman who thought he was disposable.